Hello, I'm talking with Tony Duhne, General Manager of the Wilson Consulting Group.
Yeah, so Wilson Consulting Group, a safety consultancy business, specialise in helping companies improve their safety leadership, their safety culture, and ultimately their safety performance. We work with all types of different companies, from small councils to big mining giants, retail giants, and everything in between.
Can I ask, how do you typically use the Global Safety Index with your clients?
Yeah, really, there's three areas we use the Global Safety Index. One is to measure safety culture. Number two is to measure safety leadership. And number three is essentially just to benchmark performance, whether it being leading or lagging indicators. I'll explain how we use it with the safety culture piece. So number one, a lot of our clients, they ask us to come in and define where they're at in terms of their safety culture. So whether we're a high performing safety company or we've still got some ways to go. So what we do is we normally go into the field, talk to a lot of the employees, talk to a lot of the frontline leaders, meet with the exec, review some documentation, but we don't pretend to do a full-on systems audit. We normally get our insights from spending time in the field. But look, the challenge with that is that we can't get to speak to every single person in the business. So how we use the Global Safety Index, and specifically the Safety Culture Index, is the companies roll that out organisation-wide, and that gives us some very specific insights into the safety culture of an organisation.
How does that add value for your clients, Tony?
Well, it's interesting, right? So we can actually do that process in parallel with what we do out in the field. So it's quite interesting. We sometimes get a number of findings, for example, that the workforce believe that management's really committed, that they're involving their workforce, and that the communication's going quite well. But sometimes you flip that on its head, we hear the exact opposite. What the Safety Culture Index allows us to do is actually validate some of that stuff. So if we've learned that from maybe visiting 5 sites or 10 sites in a business, those big global organisations, we can actually get that data company-wide, and that normally validates what we've found.
You mentioned the Safety Culture Index, but also the Safety Leadership Index. How do you use the Safety Leadership Index? How is that different to the Safety Culture Index?
Yeah, look, we use that a lot in our safety leadership training. So, look, a big part of what we share with employers is that leadership influences culture. Culture drives behaviours, and those behaviours yield the results. So rather than focus on all those results, those safety incidents and injuries and near misses, why don't we actually try and improve leadership and culture? So when we're doing a safety leadership program, we actually get participants to self-assess their safety leadership. So it takes this big thing called safety leadership and breaks it down into 7 areas. So how do leaders set clear expectations? How do they lead by example? How do they involve others? How do they demonstrate care? Those types of areas. And what we find in a safety leadership course is that people get to do that self-assessment beforehand. They can even do a 180 or a 360 type reflection before the program, then actually learn how to practically apply some of those traits and keys to safety leadership. And actually it helps them pinpoint specific areas of safety leadership, one that they're already good at, or 2 where they have identified some areas to improve.
What sort of output do you get from the Global Safety Index? Do you get reporting online, offline?
Yeah, it's all online, which is really good. So I suppose if I go back to that safety leadership piece, it can work in 2 levels, because on an individual level, you get some personal feedback and you can develop your own personal action plan based on that. But number 2, if you're a leader of a number of leaders, you can actually assess the bench strength of your leadership team. So in that leadership team, you might have 5 leaders that are high performers, but you might also have a couple of leaders there that need a lot of work. The opportunity there is that you can buddy up those high performing leaders with those leaders that need need some improvement in their safety leadership. The beauty of it, Brendan, is that it's all online. It can actually be done by a safety professional or by an operations leader. Send it out to your leaders, get them to self-assess or do that 360 or 180 review, and then develop a 90-day action plan and hold your leaders accountable to it. It's that simple.
In your experience, Tony, how do clients typically, once the safety culture index is closed, how do they typically look at the results, get to understand the results, and then translate those results into actions back in the workplace?
Yeah, so from a safety culture index perspective, what it does is it allows an organisation to really focus resources. So instead of just focusing and saying, hey, we need to improve our culture, it actually highlights the components of culture that need to be focused on. So whether that's communication, whether that's employee involvement, whether it's just consistent and practical application of some policies and procedures, whatever it is, there's specific areas that companies can focus on to improve. I suppose it also informs when leaders are out doing their safety walks and talks or safety interactions, it informs some of that questioning. So rather than just ask broad questions about how's safety going, they can actually ask specific questions on, hey, look, we did this safety culture survey, this safety culture index, and you guys told us that some of our procedures weren't practical or weren't consistently applied. So that leader can actually ask questions around, well, can you give me some examples of what procedures or what processes aren't consistent so that we can start fixing that stuff?
I think you had an exposure to the new Gen 2 system that has just been launched as we're speaking. From what you saw of the Generation 2 of the new system, were there any elements in there that you thought added even further value to your clients?
Yeah, look, the Gen 2 system's really exciting, Brendan. Look, the clear opportunity and what a lot of our clients are talking about and starting to work on is this thing called control effectiveness. So the beauty of the Gen 2 system, it allows us to measure simply anything you need to. So instead of measuring all those lag indicators, what the Gen 2 system allows us to do is to actually measure what controls that need to be in place and working effectively, and I suppose essentially measure the effectiveness of those controls. If we think of a dashboard for a executive team or a board, it actually allows that one line of sight to what controls need to be in place and whether they are actually in place.